And now on Esoteric Cliffnotes, we have The School for Gods by Stefano. And just something to note, there are chapters and subsections within the chapters. So it's not like there's kind of sections and then chapters within. So just keep that in mind while I'm reading through the subheadings. And let's start. All right, Chapter 1, The Encounter with the Dreamer. A manager is an employee who struggles to believe in what he does. Only the dream is real. To be dependent, even if involuntarily, is always a personal choice. Nothing and no one can force you into dependency. Only you can do that to yourself. Dependency is a disease of the being. It is a result of one's incompleteness, the dreamer revealed. To be dependent means ceasing to believe in oneself. To depend means to stop dreaming. One day there will be a society that merely dreams and will no longer have to work. A humanity rich enough to dream and infinitely rich because it dreams. Wake up, start your own revolution, rise up against yourself. Dream of freedom, freedom from all constraints. You are the only obstacle to everything you desire. Dream, dream, dream without end. The dream is the most real thing there is. Before I continue, just a note from the reader. I didn't want to get to, all of the color associated with it, but essentially the writer meets the person who he calls the dreamer, who only he can see, and most of what I highlighted was actually what he was saying. So it's this person that's kind of appeared to him and only him. All right, part 3. I am a woman. Anything happening in your own life is a faithful reflection of your will. Remember, all possibilities lie in the now. Part 4. A dying species. To bend under the weight of unpleasant situations and misfortunes, to take these things terribly seriously, is to reinforce a miserable description of the world and perpetuate its events. Visibila ex invisibus. All that we see and touch, all that is visible, is born from the invisible. Part 6. Changing the past. From the dawn of civilization, by means of a generational contamination, millions of men, sealed into a hypnotic sleep, have learned to believe blindly in scarcity and limits. Part 7. Inner forgiveness. Inner forgiveness has the power to transform your past and all its dead weight. Part 8. Self-observation is self-correction. Self-observation is akin to taking a bird's-eye view of oneself and one's life, said the dreamer, defining this concept and sharpening his observation. He went on, it is like putting events, circumstances, and relationships from the past under a bright ray of sunlight. Part 9. Death is no solution. This man suffers not because he is facing an event which brings him pain and grief. Rather, he is facing this event because he has chosen suffering as his natural state. Death is immoral and unnatural. Physical death is only the materialization of millions of deaths which take place inside us every day. It is the crystallization of a faith borrowed from a humanity which indulges in pain and loves suffering. The body is indestructible. Death is always suicide. Once this way of thinking has become your own flesh, it will overturn your vision of the world and with it your reality. It is our being that creates the world and not vice versa. Our level of being creates our life. Everything that you see and touch is the reflected image of your being and comes from your incompleteness. From that gap you bear inside. In existence, there are no empty spaces. If you do not fill them intentionally by forcing yourself to think and act in a different way, then the world will do it for you mercilessly. And that was from part 10, Healing Comes from Within. Part 11, Landlords. You didn't want to see that the person behind the mask, disguised as a landlord, was you. You meeting yourself. Part 12, Judith La Signorina. And Judith, I think, was the writer's mistress who was married with kids. Kids from even another marriage, I think. No, this was his mistress from when he was married. They had 2 kids together, and she had this like terminal illness, and he was having an affair during that time. Yeah. Death is never an accident. Like sickness and happiness and poverty, for years you prayed this would happen without even admitting it to yourself. You intensely desired and even invoked it. Dreams always come true, even the darkest ones. Each one of us is given an immense margin of salvation. Life is very powerful and the body is indestructible. In order to die, you must make the impossible possible. Forgive him. Forgiving him will heal your past and replace it with the light of today. And by that he means the man that he had been. Part 13, Thank You, Louisa. Or maybe I got the names mixed up. But anyway, he did have an affair. Ask her forgiveness, ordered the dreamer in a fatherly tone. Her life was special. It has made you recognize the death that is inside you, your sense of victimhood, your feelings of guilt, and the destructiveness which have guided your existence. All these men and women were not outside of me, but were merely the projection of an unhealthy vision of existence. Self-observation is self-healing. The past needs to be blessed and healed. Go into every fold, bring light into every corner, transform the past with a new understanding. Your past will be healed when you cease to indulge in anxieties, doubts, and fears. This is the real meaning of inner forgiveness. Chapter 2, Lupilius. Part 1, Encounter with the School. Before I continue, just some background from the reader. So this dreamer keeps on showing up throughout his life, pretty much for the rest of his life. The writer is still alive, so this book is a pretty recent book. And Lupilius, I won't go through the whole story, but he was this person that was written about, that was written to be immortal, and had kind of started teaching this school for immortals, like teaching other people to be immortal and have this really strong conviction and character that really came with it. They're almost inseparable. Anyway, let's continue. Part 1, Encounter with the School. The school is a quantum leap from multitude to integrity, from conflict to harmony, from slavery to freedom. Finding the school means binding yourself to the dream with a steel cable. It means being able to access the highest levels of responsibility. Only few can endure such an encounter. Part 2, The world is a legend. Everything that you see, everything that surrounds you, is not the world, but only a description. The true creator of the reality that surrounds you is you, but you have forgotten. The world requires you so that it can exist. We can only see what we are. If a thief would encounter a saint, he wouldn't see past his pockets. Only a harmonious and complete vision can heal the world. Part 3, A School for Overturning. A school for transformation. The school for gods, where one learns to govern oneself before governing others. Death destroys whatever is incapable of becoming truth. If we are true in every cell of our body, we will never die. You need, above all, to cast out the enemy within your own flesh. There are not thousands of enemies, there is only one, and victory is only one, that over yourself. Whoever you meet, whatever you encounter, is always the past, even if it appears to be before you at this moment. What you see and touch is only the materialization of your inner states. Past is dust. Vision and reality are one and the same. The world is your reflection. Turn your beliefs upside down and the world will follow like a shadow. Reality will take the shape of a new vision. True knowledge can only be remembered. Part 4. Lupilius. Lupilius, a free spirit of the Dark Ages and a native of Ireland. He had no habits or routines. It is said that he could stay awake for inordinate amounts of time and no one had ever seen him sleep. Sleeping makes you weak, says the dreamer, in your mind and in your body. Actually, Lupilius. This was Lupilius saying this. Apologies. Sleeping is nothing but a bad habit. He would disguise himself as a slave, a vagabond, a politician, a banker, or a wealthy merchant, and he would use these roles strategically. Whether it was the king's crown or the robe of a monk, Lupilius assumed them and had his disciples wear them too, teaching them how to become the characters they were inhabiting, to explore and understand their every detail and secret, but without ever forgetting that they were playing a game and becoming trapped by it. Real warriors do not fight for supremacy or control over others. They do not fight for glory nor for any possession or reward, but to gain the only thing that truly matters, their own inner freedom. Free forever from all human conditions and natural limitations. Incorruptibility and purity make a warrior invulnerable, impervious to attack from even the most dreaded evils. Part 5. Meeting with Father S. And so some background from the reader. Father S is somebody he had found who I think was familiar with the book or had the book in his library or was familiar with the history of Lupilius, something like that. Anyway, we go on. I recognized my sickness, the propensity for depending on the world, and in particular for idolizing knowledge gained from books. Once again, I was making the external world my god. Coming face to face with some fetish was enough for me to elect that man to be my leader, even though I had never met him. The more you are, the more you know. Part 6. The Doctrine of Lupilius. Lupilius is the prophet of physical immortality, the birthright of every man, a right that we have relinquished and which we must reclaim. The body is a spirit made flesh. If the spirit is immortal, so then is the body. A man's shield is his purity and his love for life and his master. A belief that death is invincible is unhealthy for humans. Your longevity is determined by your mental state, by your life urge. If you die, you are the only one responsible. By questioning the inevitability of death, even only ironically, its power would be weakened. Man prefers to die rather than take on the immense task of conquering himself in his incompleteness. In any case, death is no solution. A man always starts again from where he has left off. Everything comes to heal us. Even physical death is actual healing. Death is the last resort to which existence turns when every other attempt to heal and to become whole has failed. And that's in part 7, Offer a Rooster to Asclepius. Part 8, Forbidden to kill yourself inside. Death attacks death and cannot affect anyone who is connected to life. This part I love. You are gods who have forgotten. You are gods in a state of amnesia. It is forbidden to kill yourself inside. It is the 1,000 psychological deaths that undermine us every day that lead to physical death. Believing death to be invincible is what kills us. The belief in its inevitability is the true killer. Part 9. The School for Gods. Nothing in there to call out. All right, part 10. My culpa. And mea culpa, MEACULPA, that's Latin for I am responsible, or I am culpable. I mean, that's where the word culpable is rooted from. So, all right, we go on. Our states of being attract the events that correspond to them, and events cause us to return to these same states. Thought is creative. Thought creates. The unexpected always requires a lengthy preparation. The higher our thoughts, the greater our life. Mea culpa. This formula, capable of harnessing the universe, from the hierarchy of the planets to the movement of the atoms, holds the secret of boundless energy. Modifying your states of being can transform the events that happen to you. Whatever men normally perceive as difficulty and misfortune, whatever they curse and try to avoid at all costs, is actually the most precious material for transforming their psychology of death into a psychology of life. Part 11. States and Events 1. Do you want to know your future? Then know thyself. Our psychology is our destiny. States and Events 2. In reality, between states and events, there is no relationship of former and latter, or cause and effect, but only of total identification. States and events are two sides of the same reality placed on different levels of existence. They are the two ends of the same stick positioned vertically. A man's emotional states are in reality events seeking an opportunity to happen and become visible. The universe is perfect the way it is. The only one who must change is you. Part 13. Put God to work. There is nothing that man needs to introduce from the outside, neither food, nor knowledge, nor happiness. It is his birthright not to depend on anything outside of himself. Man can feed himself from the inside, nourish himself from his own intelligence, his own will, and his own light. And this is from Lupilius. Anything coming from out there can only help you to recognize in yourself the true source of all your troubles, limitations, and misery. But existence is not real. It is a device that serves the dream, so as to help you return to the source to find out what is really real. There is nothing outside of ourselves which is not ruled by the dream. Part 14. The Art of Vigilance. If you really have to sleep for a few minutes, then you must approach sleep from a state of wakefulness. Part 15. Bad Habits. For breakfast, a march before dawn. For dinner, a light meal. The battlefield is the body, said Lupilius. Every refusal of food and every minute rescued from sleep is a victory in the battle against death. Physical death is immoral, unnatural, unnecessary. Food, sleep, sex, disease, old age, and death are bad mental habits. We must rid ourselves of them. Eat less and dream more. Sleep less and breathe more. Die less and live forever. Part 16. You won't make it. There's nothing in there. Well, the dreamer says, you can make it only if you remember me. Part 17. Turn your convictions upside down. What really gives them a different destiny is the direction of their beliefs, the different quality of their goals, to be conscious or not. Part 18, Narcissus Syndrome. The Narcissus Syndrome. The fable of Narcissus is the metaphor of a man who becomes a victim of his own creation. Narcissus was not in love with himself, but with the image reflected in the water, while unaware that it was his own. In fact, believing he was looking at somebody else, he became infatuated, fell into the water, and tragically drowned. Once you realize that the world you see is a projection of yourself, you are free of it. To believe that the world is outside us means to become its victim, to be swallowed up by it. The world is created by you every second. And this part I especially loved. Forget about wars, revolutions, and economic, social, or political reform. Concern yourself with the one who is truly responsible for everything that happens. Stop thinking about the dream and take care of the dreamer in you. The greatest revolution, the most difficult of all undertakings, yet the only one that has any sense, is changing oneself. Part 19, A Man Cannot Hide. Oh, there's nothing in there, so, okay. Now, Chapter 3, The Body. Part 1, You Are the World. The others, they are outside yourself. They are fragments of you distributed in time, reflections of a disintegrated psychology. This is the sin of all sins, the original sin. When you wish for something and stretch out your hand, even to reach for an apple, wholeness is gone, paradise lost. Part 2, Psychological Dwarves. The world is a chewing gum. It takes on the shape of your teeth. Earthly paradise is a projection of a state of being, a portable paradise. In order to keep it intact, to hold its atoms together, one must be constantly on the alert. One must constantly intervene. Human thoughts and emotions have a physical nature made up of colors and smells, which reveals one's states of being and level of responsibility, even at a distance. Part 3, A Song of Sorrow. Once he forgets that he is the maker, creator, and absolute master of anything and everything, man becomes prey to an insidious notion of the world as miserable, wretched, futile. He lives like a beggar, afflicted by a sense of guilt and a constant feeling of failure. Poverty is a mental illness. Part 4. The body cannot lie. The body reveals the being. It should always resonate with pleasure, joy, like that of a child. But you have forgotten. The body cannot lie. The being, the body, and the world are one and the same. Everything that you see and touch is a lidified light. The body is the true dreamer. The body dreams, and its cells and its organs dream. The body is the real maker of your personal world. Oh, this part I loved. Coughing is your way of saying no, of digging in your heels and resisting me. I am what stops you from growing old, what protects you from your plan of falling ill and dying. I am what stops you from returning to the vulgarity of your past, to repetitiveness and chance. With me, you cannot degrade yourself. This is why you see me as your worst enemy. It is easier to follow hypnotically the old path towards degradation and suffering than to climb upwards and go aside against the tide, rebelling against poverty, the tyranny of old age and sickness, and the immortality of death. Part 5, Be frugal. Food is death. Aging reveals your lack of frugality, intelligence, and love. Eventually, when you are more advanced, you will realize that even one meal a day is excessive. A man's organs were not created for processing and disposing of food. A man's organs, all his organs, are made to dream. This is their natural function. The healing process is underway. A rebirth of the being starts and manifests itself first in the body, then in the world of events. A World Without Hunger, Part 6. All right, there's a lot in here that I called out. So here we go. Once you've stopped believing that the external world is the source of your substance, you can no longer draw nourishment from the lower levels of life, and you will no longer be able to feed yourself on coarse substances. When humanity raises the quality of its being through new ways of thinking, feeling, breathing, and acting, this more responsible humanity will discover an alternative source of sustenance. This food, or true nourishment, originates from ourselves and will only become accessible again when it is our will that governs our lives and not the description of the world. Suddenly, even before his explanation had become clear, my internal dialogue subsided. Only something like a sob remained, like the tail end of a childish tantrum. Then even that ceased. I thought back to the myths of classical antiquity and the ancient Greeks' belief that the gods' table was abundantly laden, not with the food of mortals, but with nectar and ambrosia. I remembered that making their bid for freedom during the Exodus, the Hebrews had been fed with manna from heaven. I conceived the inconceivable, a civilization without food, a world without hunger. I realized how much space and time food takes up in our lives and the absurdity of the resources consumed in this way. We live in the conviction that unless we are nourished from the outside, we cannot survive. Haunted by the specter of hunger, without realizing it, we have based our lives on food and turned it into an obsession, a relentless activity of planetary dimensions. I felt overwhelmed by the thought of billions of people stubbornly working to cultivate, produce, raise, buy, cook, distribute, consume, and digest. I wondered what cities would look like without grocers, restaurants, and supermarkets. I had an apocalyptic vision of life with desolate larders, empty refrigerators, bare tables, a life without business lunches, candlelit dinners, or the rhythm of meal times ruling the family's day. What in the world could ever fill the abyss of time and space opened up by this absence? Turn your vision upside down, suggested the dreamer. Think how many resources could be devoted to beauty, art, music, entertainment, the search for truth and self-knowledge. A society free of food would be a society free of sickness, old age, and death. And a world without slaughterhouses and farms, without the need to produce food or cultivate fields, there would be no crime or poverty, no ghettos, wars, or conflicts, nor social workers. A world without food would be a world without ideological divisions, superstitions, or religions. There would be no starving children or hospices. There would be no tribunals, hospitals, or graveyards. It would be a world where resources could be directed towards realizing humanity's greatest dream. Once man succeeds in defeating the industry of death, and the economics of disaster, which are materializations of his fears, he will be able to regain his birthright and achieve the supreme aim of his existence, physical immortality. What you call the economy is actually nothing more than a system of survival, even if in the richest countries, and yet wait, even in the richest countries. And yet the cost of such a system has become unsustainable. A society that recognizes the creative power of thought and its capacity to nourish will produce better goods and services for both the individual and all mankind. Oh, this part I loved. Between dream and reality, there is neither distance nor division, just as there is no distance between being and having, or believing and seeing, said the dreamer. Whatever a man dreams is already true. It only takes a little time for it to become visible. And then underneath it, there's the equation: dream plus time equals reality. The dream manifests itself through time. It is only because of our limited perception that we need time in order to see it. Time for man is like a magic paint that reveals what otherwise would remain invisible to human eyes. Behind everything you see and touch, there is a dream in order to exist. A world of wonder or a world of pain must be dreamed in order to become real. The dream is the most real thing there is, and behind the dream is our body, our cells, our organs. Dream. Be more sincere and honest with yourself, and you will realize that behind your false belief of wanting to change your life, there is the secret plan to keep perpetuating it just as it is. The world is such because you are such. Part 8. No war within, no war without. Remove yourself from any form of hypnotism, dependency, superstition. Do not lean on anybody's knowledge, fantasy, or prophecy. Know that there is no power out there that can destroy you. Out there, nothing can happen without your consent. He considered musicians and artists in general to possess a low level of responsibility and personal weakness. For the dreamer, the bohemian world, even those whom history has consecrated as geniuses, were actually dependent on their own art. Part 9. Thinking is Destiny. All right. I guess the title will suffice. There's nothing particularly that's interesting in that section. Okay. Part 4. The Law of the Antagonist. Part 1. Running. There is no difficulty or limit that does not originate in itself. Nothing in part 2. Part 3, the walls. Nothing in there. Part 4, the law of the antagonist. Fear not the antagonist. Behind his fierce mask lies our greatest ally, our most faithful servant. That one's huge. Okay. The world is in effect a projection not only of your dreams, but also your nightmares. It can be a heaven or a hell. You alone decide. Part 5. Love your enemy. The one and only aim of the antagonist, concealed by his mercilessness, is your victory. No one on earth can love you more than the antagonist. The only enemy is within you. Outside there is no enemy to forgive, nor any evil that can harm you. The antagonist employs every artifice, every strategy to achieve his final goal, your integrity. Part 6. Learn to smile inside. For those who have a dual logic, still seeing and thinking through a system of opposites, healing can only present itself wearing the ferocious mask of the antagonist. The impossible always opens the door to the next possibility. From him I was receiving the teaching of a martial art capable of transforming every attack and apparent adversity we encounter in life into a propulsive force. Enemies and obstacles now appeared in a new light. Uncompromisingly denouncing your lack of preparation, your faults, and the limits that you yourself have imposed. Once you recognize the antagonist inside yourself, it will disappear from the outside. And this part I loved. For the moment, learn to consider the antagonist as your closest ally, and hope that he is increasingly fierce and strong. The higher our responsibility, the more ferocious the antagonist's attack. In time, this vision will overturn your life and create the world you have always wanted. In reality, the antagonist appears in your life to point out everything that you should change inside, everything that you do not want to see, touch, or feel in yourself. All the world needs is to save itself from you. Only when you become free of the world's description will you be able to set it free. Turn yourself into a man who dreams, who creates, who loves. Only he who has decided to conquer himself meets the antagonist. A falling man has no antagonists. His descent is free and painless. Part 7. The Suite at the St. James. Style is conscious. Invest everything you have, and even what you don't have, on yourself, always. You will see your life become richer and broader in every sense. If you bet on yourself, life will bet on you. Don't worry about money. Worry about yourself, about your integrity. When money is needed, it will be right there. Trust yourself, trust your dream, and you will have all the money necessary to match a beautiful life. The masterpiece of your very dreaming is you. Part 8. Before the cock crows. Do you know yourself? Do you know who you are? Do you love yourself more than anything else? Have you stopped killing yourself inside? Loving oneself inside is an act of will. It means knowing oneself. Loving oneself inside means celebrating life unceasingly in its totality. Apparently, I left a lot of parts in this book. And so here's another one. If we want to change something, we can only do so by elevating our being. The destiny of a man, as well as of an organization, nation, or an entire civilization and its economy, is a projection of his being and vision. The broader a man's vision, the richer his reality. Part 9. Dinner with the Dreamer. A real man doesn't belong to any philosophy, ideology, or religion. A real dreamer has no labels. He cannot belong. He cannot be confined. He knows that the antagonist comes only to allow us to overcome our limits. For this, he blesses every apparent obstacle, every apparent adversity. If one day, walking into a garden, you happen to step on a thorn, never forget to give thanks. Part 10. The Dishonest Administrator. Nothing in there. Part 11. The victim is always guilty. The antagonist measures us. It measures our aim, our goal, the scope of our dream. Aim is the anagram of I am. And then underneath it, there's an equation that says aim equals I am. No one can have a goal that is greater than himself, he revealed, and added, an ordinary man can dream of a small apartment, another of a house on the beach, but only a king can dream Versailles. Oh, I love that. Okay. The amplitude of one's own being sets the limit of what he can ask for from life and the culmination of his every desire. At the same time, it is also the limit of all that a man can receive and possess. Our division creates the violence that then we meet outside. Whatever comes from outside must be transformed. Let incidents, circumstances, and relationships fall into a place inside you where junk and rubbish can be transformed into a new substance, new energy, and new life. Do not ever expect anything from anybody. Real freedom cannot be given. A man must conquer it for himself and want it absolutely and at any price. Everything one is, everything one has, must be left behind and transcended in order to be and have more. Part 12, the tickets. So in this piece, just some background from the reader, the dreamer asks the writer, Stefano, to get tickets to this show that's sold out, this opera that's sold out, and he finds this impossible task, and yeah, so that's pretty much it. Okay, let's continue. To find them, you could have had to derail your own destiny. Finding them would have changed you forever. Yours was not a failure, but the result of a failure, the reflex of an internal fault, a condition of your being. There are no failures in life, but only effects. The sleeping beauty is the dreamer inside you who knows. This part I loved. The ordinary man does not dream. He blindly obeys a hypnotic tale of existence. He has forgotten his uniqueness, his nature as creator, because he does not have access to himself. He does not know himself. Whatever you dream happens, and if you begin to know yourself, you will understand why the world is as it is. Now you know why the world is as it is, because you dream it so. Part 14. Les Miserables. Seeing and believing are one and the same thing. In time you will see everything you believe in, and you will realize everything that you dream. It is the principle of those who rule. It is the ineluctable law of kings. Oh, yeah. The dream is the most real thing there is. All right, Chapter 5, Goodbye to New York. Part 1, On the Streets of Manhattan. Nothing in here. Part 2, Tools of Dreaming. Nothing in here. Just a note from the reader, like, a lot of it is repetitive. It's almost like a more active rather than passive primer, like A Course in Miracles, where it's just this large book. There's a lot of great concepts. A lot of it is repetitive, and it seems almost intentional just to really get it in your brain and get it in your subconscious. So I have repeated some phrases. I'm not necessarily going to try to avoid that, but that's why I'm really passing through some of these pieces, because this book is more than 400 pages. Okay, Part 3, The Lie. Nothing in here. Part 4, Goodbye to New York. So he pretty much leaves New York, I think, for Italy or something, or maybe it's the Middle East, but he leaves New York for a job opportunity. Okay. Oh, this part I love. Knowledge is an inalienable asset which you have always had. It is already within you, like happiness, prosperity, free will, unity of being, and whatever you seek, be it God or money. Knowledge cannot come from outside. No one can give it to you. It can only be remembered. Part 5, Love Doesn't Depend. Love doesn't depend. Love and freedom are one. One day you will realize that you are the artisan and not the artifact. You are the dreamer and not the dreamed, the creator, not the creation. Everything is at your service. Then you will no longer be dependent. The world is such because you are such and not vice versa. Nothing in Part 6. Part 7, A Second-Hand Future. What man calls a future is really just his past seen from behind. The only chance you have to take charge of your own life is in the here and now. Part 8, Dinner with the Sheikh. Yeah, so it is in the Middle East. I think United Emirates that he moves to. Okay. Part 9, Escape into Sickness. You are the only real obstacle, your own evolution's greatest enemy, and the sole cause of your every failure. It will take many years of self-observation and a great deal of hard work for you to realize that those negative circumstances which you see as objective, external, and independent of your will are in reality your own creation. The obstacles you encounter are the materialization of an inner lament, the song of sorrow that always comes from the darkest parts of your being. Part 10, The Spider and the Prey. Nothing much in there. Part 11, hide and seek of existence. Only a real dreamer can feel safe. Dream is safety. Doubt, fear, sufferings are illusions, but ordinary man's soul reality. Feel safe permanently. Be safe and feel immortal right now. Part 12, the bottle. Oh, this is when he started just drinking a lot. And he had kidney stones. Okay. Part 13, the real pores. Nothing in here. Part 14, fear is degraded love. An entrepreneur is already a man on the path towards the dream. Sickness does not exist. The body never becomes ill. It can only send signals in the form of symptoms to let you know what is missing from your being. Sickness does not exist. What does exist is healing. All healing is released from fear. Once you are free from the real cause, the symptoms disappear too. People who have kidney problems are attracted to activities involving communication, and they immerse themselves in this activity precisely in order to achieve a balance with what they are lacking, this lack of connection, of understanding, of communion. Part 15, the solution comes from above. Believing that you can improve and evolve is part of the old humanity's cachet of superstitions. It is a bigoted, blind faith. Improving is the password for those bent on keeping things the way they are, for those who indulge in an obstacle and lethargic way of thinking. The solution in the life of a man, as in the history of an entire civilization, can never exist within time, but on another plane, in vertical time. A time without time, an erasing of the quality of thought that can only take place in this very instant. Only by managing the instant suspended between nothing and eternity can humanity shape its destiny and create events of a higher order. When you start to observe yourself and know yourself, everything that is right will start to happen, and whatever is not part of the dream, whatever is not useful or is damaging or superfluous, will start to dissolve. Every time I said yes to the dreamer, it meant death to a world of falseness, compromise, and hypocrisy. Chapter 6, to Kuwait City. Part 1, this is economy. Nothing in there. Part 2, forgetting the dream. Nothing important in there. Part 3, worry is an animal instinct. Making plans is like digging a well and expecting it to contain the immensity of the ocean. This shield of weakness, this armor of illusion that makes you feel protected, the frail mental screen that you've placed between yourself and reality, rips open, and suddenly a man is confronting an abyss, the immensity of life as it is, and not as has been described to him. Part 4, escape is only for a few. Evolution of the masses is impossible. No revolution or ideology can succeed. Escape is only for a few. Only the individual can make it. Businesses will be the religion of the planet, the religion of religions. It's in business more than in convents, mosques, or ashrams that men are engaged in a titanic effort aimed at the highest levels of responsibility. It's in business that adversity and difficulty are being converted into a propellant to be used on the journey towards freedom. It's in the skyscrapers of multinationals and the temples of finance, more than in synagogues and monasteries, that men are attempting the impossible, reversing their vision, changing their destiny. I personally would disagree, but the word business, comes from busyness. We don't want to be busy. That's just from the reader here. All right, moving on. Part 5, make programs but don't believe them. Nothing to call out here. I think you can kind of get it from the title. or subtitle, Part 6, The Diary. Let the game continue. Let the comedy unfold. Allow collaborators and professionals to do what their role demands. The company is a theatrical representation with masks and characters who follow a script. Don't believe it. Don't lose your way. Don't forget its game. Planning and believing is like dying. One can only plan what is dead. The true plan is in this moment, in the here and now. Men and events rise and dissolve following a script already written into being. You'll act out the meanings and roles and let the world be free to happen. It is the best possible way. The world will become your masterpiece without effort or constraint. Only then will your agenda be that of a true leader, and it will contain only blank pages. Part 7. Hello, who am I? The others are you. Hello, who am I means remembering that you're meeting your confusion. The world wants to be ruled. Whoever calls needs to be contained, needs clarity. Everyone answering the telephone seems to ask who is calling, but in actual fact, they already know. You already know who it is on the other end because it's you who is calling yourself. Clarity, give clarity to the world, and on the other end of the line, there will be good news. Be free. There is no problem to solve outside, no wicked entity to defend yourself against, no enemy to fight. To give an answer to the world, you have to become the solution. Enter into sincerity, simplicity, lightness, and the brightness of the being. If you're able to watch the game from above, you'll discover that the world on the other end of the line is offering you all its gratitude and devotion. Part 8, Tripping Up Mechanical Habits. Every intentional effort, even the smallest, made to modify a repetitive action, a mechanical reaction, or to break a habit, is a victory over our monotony, the tripping up of repetitive habits and recurrences of our lives. Part 9, Winning Ourselves. Winning oneself means unearthing, the will, swimming against the tide toward integrity. This part I loved. When time attacks you, swallow time. When pain attacks you, swallow pain. When doubt attacks you, swallow doubt. When fear attacks you, swallow fear. Part 10. The dream is the most real thing there is. Only very few individuals can recognize that the world has neither direction nor will of its own. Identifying yourself with that role only means that you move to another prison. Excuse me. Fear means being free from identification with the world. The dreamer had always suggested understatement and the importance of not being too accessible by participating in only a few official events and carefully choosing and strategically preparing for those occasions. Part 11, Eleanor. And this was, I think, another girlfriend of his. All right, part 12, the adoption. A man of integrity, no matter at what latitude he finds himself, respects the customs, habits, and religious beliefs, whatever they may be, of the people who are his hosts. The heart's understanding guides his choices. Beyond time and geography, his ethics will, without effort, always allow him to feel at home in lawfulness and morality. Nothing is external. Nothing, not even the adoption of a baby, can eliminate your inner deaths, fear, solitude, and suffering. The world's attacks are a blessing. They always come to heal us. The world has to intervene from the outside to denounce that lack, that sickness you believe you don't have. The baby that had adopted them and not vice versa. That in reality, it was he who was their benefactor. That little one had come to take on all their malaise and loneliness, attempting to heal them from their fears, guilt, and sterility. According to the dreamer, had they recognized all this, they would have had no need to adopt the baby and endure the conflicts and hostility. Chapter 7, Return to Italy. Part 1, The Clause. Nothing in there. Nothing in Part 2, The Unpleasant Awakening. Part 3, Ignorance is always close at hand. Nothing in there. Or Part 4. Part 5, Psychological Pollution. Positive emotions, in order to arise, require long preparation and work on ourselves. It takes years of self-observation to eliminate the layers of ignorance, coarseness, and everything that impedes these states of being. Part 7, The Accident. The world cannot move a hair without our consent. The world is as you dream it. Part 8, The Letter, a King Midas in reverse. Oh, this is where he wrote a letter to the dreamer. We won't read all that. Part 9, Dance for heaven's sake, dance. Nothing in there. Part 10, You're alive and sincere only when you're threatened. Evil is not to be violent, but to be unaware of one owns violence. Violence is the reverberation of a conflicting mentality, the effect of self-sabotage, of killing oneself inside. Part 11, Healing can only happen from within. A good pause is like having good capital. The dreamer explained to me that humanity, as it is, sealed in a hypnotic dream, can only live permanently under the threat of ruthless antagonists. Through his words, as had happened on many other occasions with him, I had a vision. The planet appeared like an old mill with huge stone wheels constantly grinding the disobedient and those who stubbornly refuse to understand. Events and circumstances don't come to heal us. They're symptoms to make us see what we are. True healing can only happen inside. Only individual revolution, a psychological rebirth, a healing of the being, man by man and cell by cell, can lead us toward planetary well-being and a more intelligent, true, happy civilization. Part 12, In Praise of Injustice. The victim is always guilty. What the ordinary man calls injustice is a resource of existence which allows him access to a state of completeness and higher levels of comprehension. Injustice is compassion made manifest. Evil is always at the service of good. Evil doesn't exist. That which is apparently negative, every adversity, or what the horizontal man calls injustice, is in actual fact a blessing. The most unjust events, actions, and circumstances come to raise the being to higher levels of completeness, integrity, and freedom. The evil behind evil, the idea of the inevitable death, the elimination of this superstition and discussion of this self-fulfilling prophecy. This prophecy that comes true on its own will resolve psychology, and physiology will resolve all ills. Being, understanding, responsibility, and destiny are one and the same. Wealth, privilege, and social disparities are only effects and the reflection of a much deeper difference. It's in the being, in our breathing and feelings that everything happens. Part 13, The world is created by our thoughts. The world is one of your inventions. The accident is the world's attempts to let you see your lack of attention and love and show you the right way. States and events are one and the same. States and events are a single thing. The time that passes between them creates the illusion in man that there is no connection between his states of being and the happenings in his life. Part 14. The past is dust. Thinking is destiny. Mankind thinks and feels negatively. We should not remember the past, we should remember the above. It's necessary to develop a vertical memory, perpendicular to the plane of history. It's necessary to elevate the being of man. The world isn't created, the world is projected. Our world, with all its events, is created by our thoughts. We should learn to follow the fresh trail of all events and return to the states that generated them, and then circumscribe and delete them. Part 15. Will and Chance. Voluntary payment given in advance is a choice of a cured mankind. The payment in advance is a transformation of oneself. Chance is a degraded, forgotten, buried will. Paradoxically, chance is an involuntary will that has taken the place of true will. Love yourself with all your strength, in every circumstance and in every condition, constantly. Things happen as a natural consequence and are all regulated by our will. What hasn't been overcome has to be repeated again. Chapter 8. To Shanghai with the Dreamer. Part 1. Perfection never repeats itself. Nothing exists that is too small or insignificant. Make sure that every one of your actions is faultless. Impeccability means not performing a single unnecessary action. When something is done well, it's done forever. The entire universe knows about it, and it's no longer necessary for you to repeat it. Perfection never repeats itself because it is constantly being transcended. A perfect chrysalis has to cease being a perfect chrysalis, apparently dying, in order to become a butterfly, a being of superior order. The universe is in our brain. It's a seed within man which develops however he chooses. Part 2. Man's reason is armed. All that you see and touch, all that man calls reality, is psychology, solidified. Man's thoughts materialize and become the world. Facts are thoughts. Athena leaped forward, shining with weapons from the hollow walls of Jupiter's cranium, the daughter born out of his headache or nightmare. It's a warning myth, said the dreamer. Man's reason is armed. This is the most lucid diagnosis of a civilization has ever been able to make of its illness. The mass is a ghost, concluded the dreamer, a mechanism influenced by everything and anything. It doesn't have faith, it doesn't have a real will, it can't create, it can only destroy. This is the true role of the crowd. Part 3, the animal that lies. Biting the apple means believing in a world outside us, one which contains and rules us, and gives consistency to the fantasy of an otherness. For man, it's the beginning of dependence and his entire tragic history. Death is always suicide. Man cannot die, he can only kill himself. Part 4. Become a free man. Dependence is fear. Even you have made fear your idol. This is why you depend, and you still earn a living hidden behind a job. I have come to liberate you, he said with a hiss. I entered your life because one day you dreamed of being free. Free means free from the world. Free means free from fears, doubts, anxieties, and negative emotions. Free from prejudices, preconceptions, from a wretched description of the world. Free from every limit. Free from falsehood and work, which is still a punishment for men like you. The perverse effect of a biblical curse. The belief that there's a reality outside you has made the world your boss. Hypnotized by the mirror's reflection, you still search for security in the eyes of others. Part 5. The Buddha's Father. Respect all men's cults and religions, he said, but don't belong to any of them. Falling ill, growing old, and dying are bad mental habits. In Buddha's story, the father is the one who is truly enlightened. He personally ensured that the young prince was constantly surrounded by joy, beauty, and wealth, and continually changed the members of the court and the servants who attended to his son. He himself wore makeup and dyed his hair and beard to prevent sickness, old age, and death from entering the young Buddha's vision. Even today, this remains one of the most instructive stories that has ever been passed on. That the Buddha's father understood the importance of the world's description, and he knew the strength of beliefs. Part 6. What depends is not real. The formation of a huge army of millions and millions of dependent workers, laborers, and clerks willing to sell their own time at a fixed price, so much an hour or a month, is an entirely modern phenomenon, without precedent in the universal history of civilizations. According to Aristotle, citizenship should be refused to all those who need to work for a living. Man should only devote himself to maintaining a high state of being, a condition of serenity, and he should never stop dreaming. Then everything will be given to him. Only a mankind educated in beauty, truth, and well-being, only a dreaming, intuitive, contemplative mankind can bear the power of not being, the responsibility of golden laziness. The old mankind wants to continue to work. Humanity wouldn't know what to do if it stopped. Part 7. Vision and reality are one. Learn to be brilliant, elegant, magnificent, and grand. Learn how to use injustice and anger. Learn how to act the role that circumstances demand. Comic, ironic, sharp, dreaming, and playful, sober and sincere, quiet and detached. Become a champion of freedom. Use your work to help mankind free itself from tyrannies and oppressions of every kind, political, religious, social, intellectual, and emotional, and you'll see an earthly paradise rising before your very eyes. Part 8. The clerical species. A man who observes himself, who laughs at himself, is free. If you were capable of observing your hell, it would disappear. Your healing would be immediate, and it would be communicated to the whole world. You are the origin and the end of every event. Healing is an inside-out process. It goes from within to its manifestation outside. Part 9. Do only what you love. The better you know yourself, the higher your role will be. The more inwardly responsible you are, the less you depend. Work will be sublimated until it disappears from human activities. The art of dreaming means loving oneself inside. It takes years of self-observation and awareness to rediscover will and regain lost integrity. A true school removes all that opposes the dream, rather than impose false, useless notions. A true school frees the young from fears, superstitions, and the hypnotic sleep that confines them to the ghetto of a dependent mankind. A man who loves is priceless. Economy is not founded on work, but happiness. Happiness is economy. The encroachment of the child's freedom and clipping the wings of its dream is an immorality that present-day mankind is incapable of seeing, and for which it pays with the thousands of social ills that affect it, and an economy founded on disaster. Part 10. The Terrible and Wonderful Direction. A man has to pay for everything he receives, and the payment takes place in his being. A man can only have what his vision holds. He can only possess what he's responsible for. An unprepared man, even if he's temporarily favored by an event or an extended circumstances or external circumstances, can be driven back into his former poverty if his new status exceeds his level of being. The richness, well-being, and quality of man's life, like that of a nation, of an entire civilization, does not depend on the availability and abundance of means and material resources, but on the breadth of his being. Be a kingdom, and the kingdom will come. The grandeur of the being always precedes the birth of a kingdom. Gosh, I love that. All right, part 11, to fall in love. Every time you fall in love, you are in fact taking a fall. And behind every fall, there's a fault. Loving someone more than oneself is like trying to fit the ocean in a glass, or claiming to absorb all the water in the sea with a handful of sand. Sex is the golden thread that allows us to retrace the path in search of our lost integrity. The algebra of the being, two halves don't make a whole, but a squared incompleteness. A true dreamer expresses himself in totality. He doesn't have room for an incomplete world. Part 12, I am you. Beyond the illusion of change, even in your life, everything repeats itself. Everything is always the same. Your attempts to have a family, the woman you've chosen, just like the roles you've occupied, the houses you've lived in, the friends you've had, have nevertheless always been a reflection of your rigidity. Signs, above any other, of the narrow strip of existence to which you've confined your life. There are worlds parallel to yours which only the dream can enter. You will never get what you want as long as your being remains as it is. You have to change yourself to get new understanding, new meaning, new life, and consequently to attract events of a higher order. Changing yourself means, first of all, getting rid of yourself. In order to be born at a higher level, you have to die at a lower one. Part 13. Universe means towards oneness. Saint, in its deepest meaning, beyond ecclesial Christian dogmatism, means sane, healed. A saint is in fact an integral whole man who has chosen completeness or unity of the being as the aim of his life. He is a man aware of his states and emotions, as he knows that the smallest deferment from the totality of himself throws him in the hells of ordinariness. Part 14. The king is the land is the king. An organizational pyramid is connected to its leader's breath. A golden thread binds his image and personal destiny to that of his organization and men. His physical self coincides with its economy, as it did for the ancient sovereigns. When the king becomes ill, the earth becomes ill, because the king is the earth is the king. A leader, businessman, a man with responsibility knows that his financial destiny, the longevity and success of his undertakings, and even his physical health are directly connected to his level of integrity. In order to attract something wonderful, to give concreteness to something, a man has to rise in his being and move closer to that condition of unity and integrity which is his birthright. It's the truest, most concrete part of each of us, the dream. Part 15. Reality is the dream plus time. Only very few, through will and their own flawlessness, can dream a perfect world and give it concreteness. It is the condition of the warrior, of the hero, of the man who loves. A man who has his dream constantly present can't be corrupted. Everything in his life is flawlessly focused on his great adventure. Men who nourish a dream do not have doubts. They do not feel uncertain or fearful. Every time they turn their mind to the dream, they feel their enthusiasm is renewed and they enter a state of freedom. Because the dream is connected to will, it is the true will. People work, plan, and accumulate with a strength and an energy that you could describe as tenacity. But it's only fear, volleys of adrenaline, like electrical storms constantly dart across the dark universe of their cells. These men and women seem to be very busy, confirmed idealists or determined businessmen, but in actual fact they're loyal to death, and their names appear on her payroll. Oof. Work for an ideal. Put yourself at the service of the humanity that dreams, that aspires, that asks. Constantly strive to perfect yourself. Always try to increase your understanding. Pay for your existence in advance, helping others in their efforts if there is a sincere request. Only a man who loves can be free, and only a free man can love. Freedom and love are two faces of the same reality. Part 16. To be touched by the dream. The ancient Greeks had coined the term idiots for idiots, but it's with an E, for man in his present condition, for the selfish. The idiot for the Greeks was the opposite of the demiurge, the leader of those who does things for others. The atoms dance, drunk on immortality, on the everlasting nectar of immortality. Oh, that's the dreamer saying that. Work day and night towards your improvement. Never forget your promise. The promise to change. It's time to devote yourself full time to the project. Change your attitude now. This is a true action. The facts, circumstances, and events of life will change in time. Chapter 9. The Game. Believing is seeing. Everything is at our door. The limit is within us. Remarkable men in every epoch have only found capital to accomplish their impossible endeavors once they have eliminated every kind of doubt from their beings. The real capital is inside us, and the resources we find are the material reflection of an inner prosperity that we know how to keep alive, whatever the circumstances might be. Don't ever separate yourself from the principles of the dream. You'll see that everything turns to your advantage, even history. The most coarse and superficial part of existence will prove you right. Behind the men who accomplish things, behind the appointed leaders of world organizations, political and humanitarian institutions, big businesses, and financial empires, behind magnates, tycoons, and leaders, there are simple, sincere, sober men who motionlessly, invisibly lead through not doing. Part 2. Change your life. Whatever conditions may rule a man's existence, they correspond perfectly to his expectations. Don't go into the world proposing yourself to others. You are already showing too many signs of need. Carry my presence, my words. Carry me. Part 3, the payment. Money is not real. What is real is man's vision, his ideas. Resources and money are only a natural consequence of them. They fall into line and assume the proportions of his dream. The bank, like the world, isn't outside you, can only give you what you already possess. The world of events is too slow to recognize who has paid beforehand, who has already settled his accounts in the invisible. It takes time to record those credits, but its administration is infallible. The more you are, the more you have. A man who believes in himself gains all the resources with which to face every undertaking, even those who are impossible. A man's economy corresponds perfectly to his level of integrity. The more you are, the more you have, and never vice versa. Quality creates quantity. Its success, longevity, its very destiny will depend on its philosophy. At the top of every organization, there will be philosophers of action, poets, and visionaries. Part 4, we are the bow, the arrow, and the target. Don't see much new here. Part 5, I've come to set you free. Stand up straight. Don't lean on anything. Don't let anyone see you tired or worn out. Always tell yourself I could have run further. On the road to integrity, there is no room for regret. Before he can break out of the prison of his roles, a man must free disappointment from the sterile repetitiveness of the events and circumstances of his own life. Roles, like bridges, are there to take you to another place. They're made to be surpassed. Every breath must be an act of gratitude, devoting to elevating the being toward new areas of freedom. Freedom from a role only comes when you've learned to act it perfectly. When we perform a role intentionally and act it perfectly, it not only frees us, but also frees the world from that coarseness, that violence. Roles are shields. Men hide behind them pretending to be busy, but in reality they're defending their own irresponsibility. Part 6, playing roles. Roles are rungs on a ladder. Don't linger on any of them. Use them. Use them to step on, and go beyond. Part 7, the path back. Not much here. Part 8, you are not ready. All of you are me, fragments of me seemingly in exile. And that's the dreamer talking. Part 9, the shortcut. In the game, there's nothing to plan. You'll have to invent instantly and purposefully act out the roles and language of existence you've never lived. Every man you meet is a door. He can bar access or become a step from which to climb beyond. Every encounter measures you and determines your position on the ladder of human responsibility. Part 10, compressing time. A reaction habit opposed, the expression of an emotion, a look, a word, or the slightest grimace reveals the position that each one occupies on the evolutionary ladder. That level of comprehension is recorded in the universe and decides the events in our lives. What we know, do, have, and finally what our financial destiny holds. When two men meet each other, inevitably one contains and the other is contained. Those who see the game lead it. Those who don't see become a victim of it. Alone in the corner of a room, a man can communicate his condition, his own level of responsibility, and his intention to the whole universe. There is no way to cheat, nor is there any room for interpretation. Part 11. Others reveal you. An encounter with a man of superior responsibility always leads to a quickening. Meeting a man who contains you is a blessing. He who takes a step beyond doesn't abandon the other to his destiny. On the contrary, he becomes responsible for him. He knows that his own revolution also leads to the other's evolution. The advancement of a man, the healing of just one cell, quickens the process of all mankind. Part 12. Intentional role-playing, the art of acting. Only those who act can rule their own life and those of others, winning and being free. Living strategically isn't opportunism, and it doesn't mean lying. It's the warrior's ability to adapt the appearance and perform the actions that the situation requires, and which the world is ready to receive. Only those who live strategically can survive. Acting is freedom. The theater to cleanse the emotions, and the baths to cleanse the body. They were the two vital glands of purification, the kidneys of that society. And this is talking about the theaters in in Greece. Woof. Part 13, the game of encounters. Nothing in there. Part 14, the new paradigm. If you know how to act flawlessly, if you appear credible as he's questioning you, then it means the money is already in your pocket. The paradigm of a new mankind is being, doing, having. The more you are, the more you do, the more you have. Having and being are the same thing, but on different planes of existence. Taste is consciousness. And this means like fashion taste and like food taste, like um yeah, in terms of sophistication. Okay. Um Whenever you buy something, even the smallest thing, you must accept nothing less than this level of care, attention, love. Don't be distracted by scarcity. Give all your attention to the dream, to the inalienable goods which are every man's birthright: integrity, beauty, happiness, understanding, love, and truth. Design, beauty, elegance, and taste inside yourself. Part 15, the replay. Nothing in here. Part 16, expecting from the world. Search for someone who knows, and you'll discover that everyone knows nothing. Look for other encounters. Create every opportunity to plug the leaks, to eliminate the misunderstandings, and settle accounts with the past. Part 17, this book is forever. And that's where the dreamer, background from the reader, that's where the dreamer implores or guides the writer to write this actual book. Chapter 10, the school, the vertical vision. Nothing in here really. Pretty much the dreamer tells the writer to start a school for dreamers, like a new kind of school. Nothing in part 2. Part 3, the dream of the dream. Nothing in part 4 or the portable paradise. Part 5, the greatest economic truth. The most economically developed countries are often completely without natural resources, but have a store of ideas, culture, history, and art. Part 6, having is being. Nothing in there. Part 7, university means towards oneness. Don't rely on any institution. True education is a subversive activity in the eyes of the establishment. This is why you won't be able to accept the authority of tradition or adhere to any existing educational concepts. Success is a natural consequence of integrity. Oh, I love that. Future battles will not be won by employing huge ships, but with a flotilla of nimble craft. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Part 8, the birth of the school. Nothing in here. Part 9, mission of the school. Nothing much in here really. All of humanity is on the death's payroll. Oh. True education is freedom from every form of hypnotism, dependence, superstition. True education is the abandonment of one's inner conflicts. This will liberate the world from all opposites. From all opposites will free the world from all contradictions, violence, and wars. I've been reading this for a while, so sorry if I'm, but we're almost done. Part 10, believing without believing. Lupilius says, it means that you can ask him, that being God, for all that you desire, and God will obey, granting your every request without limits. God is a good servant, but not a good master. God loves to serve. He loves to love. The mortal sin of atheism, therefore, is not disbelief in God, but denial of his existence. Denial of his existence, but disbelief in oneself. Okay. Part 11, the secret of doing. Memory and fate, past and future, are illusions. Recognize them as nothing other than simultaneous projections of this moment, of the now, and you will be free. In the now, there is no defeat, only victory. Part 12, the past is a lie. Only apparently does the past repeat itself. In reality, there is no past, neither in a man's life nor in the history of civilization. The past is a lie. There isn't any karma, and there isn't any former life, any guilt, any sin, or any punishment. There's no afterlife or universal judgment, no hell, no paradise. There is only this instant, sacred, infinite, omnipotent. Use it well. There will never be another chance. Outside of the now, we're helpless, dependent on time, limited, vulnerable, mortal. Part 13, state is place. The place where he is, the environment surrounding him, the people he meets, all demonstrate a remarkable correspondence with his states of being, the quality of his emotions, of his thoughts. Part 14, be a king and the kingdom will come. Commitment is investment. Oh, there's nothing in there. Okay. 15, the bank. Commitment is investment. Commitment is luck. Wager everything. Don't leave one single atom out of the orbit of your responsibilities. Bet everything you have, everything you don't have on yourself, on your ideas, and the whole world will bet on you too. Part 16, money is not real. The impossible is the possible viewed from underneath. Aim higher, elevate the being. You will understand that the art of dreaming, the art of believing and creating, is precisely that, the capacity to transform the impossible into the possible, and at last into the inevitable. This is the first condition for your integration. Commitment to your ideas has to be total. The quality and success of your life depend on your level of commitment. Part 17, believe then see. You must fast on the eve of battle. The food of the being is will. The food of the mind is silence. The food of the body is fasting. I love that part. Believe then see is the ineluctable law of kings, and it is the law of those who govern themselves. Part 18, the auction. And so back from the reader, this is when The writer is going to an auction to buy this historical castle or whatever for his new school. And all this actually happened. So, um, we go on. In reality, it is your fear that is the source and the true cause of what you will be afraid of. And the dreamer continues, I am the lethal threat to everything in you that's decided to die, and all in you that lives on death. The supreme goal of the School of Gods is victory over death. When you stop doing damage to yourself, when you stop polluting your being with conflictual thought, negative emotions, and destructive attitudes, those antagonists will disappear. Desire is time, and all that belongs to time is false. Nothing can be possessed in time, nor is there any solution or remedy. You can only understand this when the now, the true time, will rule in you. You are here to overcome the most dreadful of all man's superstitions, his most deeply rooted lie. You are here for the sole purpose of opening a gateway to deathless life, to infinity. When you stop dying within, there will no longer be a time outside of yourself, a time that imposes a cadence on your life, makes you grow old, get sick, and die. When you stop dying within, real life will overwhelm you and occupy all atoms of your being. The true victory, the solution is one. Return to yourself. Return to being integral, complete, unique. Everything, I say, everything including the past will take on your aspect and will be created in your image in perfection. Living near the dreamer is the most difficult task you could ever undertake. Here, closer to the dreamer, there is no space for you to indulge in weakness, regret, doubt, or fear. The dream is the most real thing there is. Dreaming is the most real thing there is. Its timeless action will create everything you've desired for years and failed to achieve. And he concludes, dream, 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 never stop dreaming, reality will follow. All right, so some closing thoughts from the reader. I think this has just been a good year for books. This book really had a deep impact on me. Um, Huge impact on me. It's focused a bit more on the masculine, but I think this applies to everybody. Um, like I said earlier, I feel like this is kind of the yin to the yang of A Course in Miracles. Um, and everything in this book just felt right. So it didn't feel like fiction. It didn't feel like some hallucination. Everything in this book just felt right. And there are a lot of practices and a lot of philosophies that are mentioned in some other books that I've read. And so this seems like truth, right? It's an amazing book. It's long, though I think it's done intentionally, and I think that intention is served. I think if one could condense this book and make it more philosophical and um, not as much of a story, but um, it I wouldn't have the same impact. I don't think it wouldn't really make an imprint on one's mind like it does in this way. So yeah, and I think it focuses more on the intent and the will and the commitment rather than the practices, what meditation looks like, what fasting looks like. Um, because if you want to do something, if you will it, eventually it will happen, including the fasting and the meditation and achieving immortality. So, and if you're really curious, you'll do research yourself. One of the things I didn't really mention here too much because I didn't want to focus that much on the story was that this guy was constantly seeking. He was traveling, he was reading. That's how he found out about these grades of Lupilius. Lupilius, yeah. Um, he was constantly in search of folks that had achieved this, of teachers, of gurus, if you will, of great masters. Um, and and that's where kind of this book kind of partially came from. So, I mean, part of it was kind of divine guidance, you could say, but I don't think you could separate that from just the relentless search for application and knowledge and for teachers and masters. So, living and dead. Yeah, strongly recommend this book. It's a long read, but it's a very, very easy read. And um, even though we've kind of gone through the highlighted points, I would recommend everybody get this book. It's a really good book.